The Israeli Antiquities Authority uncovered the remains of a 1,500-year-old Byzantine church just outside of Jerusalem. Wow, look at that. Oh, it's just coming to life. That's unbelievable. My brain is exploding right now. It looks like it was written just few hours ago. It really does. For centuries, historians believed that every word Jesus spoke was already preserved. But along the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee, archaeologists have uncovered a discovery that challenges that belief entirely. Beneath the remains of a vast Byzantine church complex spanning nearly 1.5 dunams, something extraordinary lay hidden. Buried for more than 1,500 years were words Jesus is said to have spoken privately to Peter. Words never recorded in any gospel, sealed under layers of mud and time inside a forgotten church built by the earliest followers of Christ. This discovery has resurfaced at last, and the message it preserved may redefine one of the most pivotal moments in Christian history: the mosaic beneath the mud. On the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee, near the point where the Jordan River flows into the lake, a small team of archaeologists began an excavation that would soon change everything. At first glance, the site seemed lifeless. The shoreline was quiet, and the ground was buried beneath thick layers of mud, left behind by centuries of flooding. Earlier, surveys had dismissed the area as impossible to work with, but this team believed the land was hiding something. For generations, local fishermen had spoken of carved stones that appeared when the water level dropped. Curious about these stories, the archaeologists decided to dig deeper. The excavation began in the height of summer. The air was heavy with the smell of wet clay and salt from the lake. Slowly and carefully, workers scraped away the surface, their tools cutting through compacted earth. Day after day, they uncovered nothing but mud, shells, and fragments of broken pottery. Progress felt slow and uncertain. Then, on the fifth morning, everything changed. A trowel struck something, smooth and solid. The sound was sharper than ordinary stone. The team paused and carefully widened the trench, clearing the area by hand. Soon, a thin line of tiny tiles emerged from beneath the silt. At first, the colors were dull, almost invisible. But as water washed away the dirt, the hues came alive. Over the next 2 weeks, the archaeologists worked methodically, revealing more of the structure section by section. What emerged was breathtaking. Thick stone walls, cleanly defined, corners, and at the eastern end, a curved chamber. This was not a simple building. It was a feature seen only in ancient churches, hidden beneath the mud, for centuries, waiting to be found. According to the team's field notes, the uncovered area stretched across nearly 1.5 dunams, large enough to hold hundreds of people. This was clearly not a small chapel. It was a full-scale Byzantine church. When conservators began gently washing the floor, the space seemed to come alive. Beneath the dirt lay a mosaic in remarkable condition. Its patterns were crisp, its colors still vivid, untouched by the centuries above them. Near the center, faint Greek letters slowly appeared. A language specialist carefully read the inscription aloud, word by word, until the meaning became unmistakable. Peter, chief of the apostles and holder of the keys of heaven. Silence followed. These words were not simple decoration. They were a bold declaration embedded at the very heart of the church. The lettering was sharp, the grout intact, and the surface unusually well preserved. Some on the team suggested the room may have been intentionally sealed to protect it. Others urged caution, insisting that only further testing could confirm such theories. Even so, one fact was undeniable. This mosaic had been placed with clear intent. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, the crew carefully covered the floor to protect it from exposure. In the distance, the lake shimmered quietly in the fading light. That evening, they left the site knowing they had uncovered far more than a forgotten ruin. According to their notes, a single question lingered in every mind. What story did this mosaic belong to? And what kind of town once surrounded it? To find the answer, they would have to journey back through history to a place often mentioned in scripture, yet absent from modern maps. A town the Gospels once spoke of and then lost. The message within the mosaic seemed to point toward a single name, one that had echoed through scripture for centuries: Bethany. According to the Gospels, this was the hometown of Peter, Andrew, and Philip. It was here that Jesus first called his disciples and performed many of his earliest miracles, and yet somewhere between history and time, the town vanished. After the first century, its name slowly disappeared from every known record. Flooding reshaped the northern edge of the Sea of Galilee, shifting the shoreline and erasing the place where the town had once stood. The site that witnessed the very beginnings of faith was gradually swallowed by both earth and memory. By the 4th century, early Christian pilgrims tried to find Bethsaida once more. They traveled along the Galilean coast, guided only by stories passed down through generations, pointing to places where they believed Jesus had walked. Some chose the wrong hills, others built small shrines, hoping they had found the right spot. But no discovery ever endured and no proof ever remained. As the centuries passed, the town faded from memory, becoming less a destination and more a mystery. It was a sacred shadow hidden beneath mud reeds and shifting land. By the 19th century, scholars renewed the search, armed with maps, notebooks, and shovels. 2 locations soon became the focus of debate. One was at that.Oh, raised mound nearly 2 kilometers inland. The other was El-Araj, a low flat plain close to the water's edge. Each site had its supporters and its own evidence, yet neither could conclusively prove its case. Etel revealed strong Bronze Age remains, but little that clearly belonged to the time of Jesus. El-Araj, on the other hand, produced Roman-era pottery and hints of mosaic floors, but constant flooding made serious excavation difficult. The argument stretched on for generations. Early 20th century surveys suggested that both places concealed ancient remains, but the discoveries were scattered and incomplete. Bethany remained lost, a town known to every reader of the Gospels, yet seen by no one. That began to change in 2016. An international team returned to El-Araj with modern technology and a single purpose to settle the question, once and for all. Through soil analysis and magnetic imaging, they detected dense shapes beneath the surface, signs of walls, roads, and buried foundations. As excavation progressed, pottery, glass, and coins emerged, all dating back to the 1st century. Within months, structures began rising from the mud. To some archaeologists, the layers told a clear story, not of a small outpost, but of a thriving fishing village that fit perfectly within the world described in the Gospels. For the first time, archaeological evidence and scripture seemed to align. Bethsaida, the town the Gospels had lost, was slowly returning to the world, and the earth was preparing to reveal far more than just its buildings. The church beneath the shoreline. As the team dug deeper, they expected to uncover only fragments of an old village, a broken wall here, a few pottery shards there, perhaps part of an ancient road. What emerged instead was something far more significant. The outline of a large early Christian church from the Byzantine era slowly took shape beneath the soil. Each day brought new clarity. What first looked like a short isolated wall became part of a series of connected rooms. Circles of stone revealed themselves as column bases still firmly set where they had stood centuries ago. By the end of the 3rd week, the team uncovered a curved chamber at the eastern end of the structure, the exact place where an altar would have stood in an ancient church. At that moment, there was no doubt. This was not a house or a warehouse. It was a church. Its size surprised everyone. The floor extended far beyond what was typical for small village chapels in the region. The layout was symmetrical and carefully planned, and the craftsmanship was unusually high. When conservators cleaned the floor, mosaics emerged, formed from tiny red, blue, and white stones arranged in precise patterns. As sunlight fell across them, the colors seemed to come alive. This was clearly more than a modest local prayer space. Some archaeologists believed it was designed to receive large numbers of visitors. And as excavation continued, the story grew even deeper. Beneath the church's foundations lay older layers dating back to the 1st century. There, the team found fishing hooks, net weights, and simple household pottery, the everyday tools of families who lived by the lake. These finds pointed to a working fishing community that existed long before the church was built. The builders, it appeared, had chosen this location deliberately, not by chance. And as written accounts were studied alongside the physical evidence, a much larger picture began to emerge. An 8th century pilgrim named Willie Bald once wrote about a church of the apostles near the Sea of Galilee. According to his account, it stood on the very spot where the homes of Peter and Andrew had once been. For many years, scholars set his words aside, dismissing them as legend rather than history. Here, however, the site at El Araj matched his description in striking ways. Excavations revealed guest rooms for travelers, sections of a bathhouse, and a large courtyard where visitors could gather. According to field reports, this was the closest anyone had come to seeing a written account and physical evidence aligned so clearly. By this stage, the team realized they were uncovering a story told in layers. First came a Roman-era fishing village. Later, a Christian community built a shrine directly above it. The decision made sense. Early Christians often constructed sacred buildings over places they wished to honor and preserve. Some archaeologists believed this church had been raised to protect the memory of the apostles themselves. Others urged caution, insisting more evidence was needed before drawing such conclusions. Still, everyone agreed on one thing. This site was not chosen by chance. One question remained unanswered. Why had this exact location been selected with such care? The answer, they would soon learn, was waiting beneath their feet. A message carved into stone and hidden at the very heart of the floor. An inscription that would speak across centuries. The inscription lay at the very center of the church's main hall, a space known as the nave, the wide area where worshippers once gathered and stood. Set into the floor was a circular border made of small, brightly colored tiles, enclosing a flat panel of text. Conservators worked slowly and carefully using soft brushes and water to clear the surface. Little by little, the letters reappeared. As the words became visible, the team formed a half circle around the mosaic, while a Greek language specialist read the inscription aloud in a calm, steady voice. At first, the message followed a familiar pattern. It was a standard dedication, crediting the construction to a man named Constantine and describing him as a servant of Christ. This kind of wording is common in church mosaics from that period. Then the meaning shifted. The inscription honored Peter as the chief of the apostles and the holder of the keys. Everyone recognized the reference. It echoed a well-known passage from the Gospel of Matthew. But the final line brought the room to a halt. The text spoke of the keys of the heavenly spheres. The phrase felt unusual, even unsettling. According to the epigraphers present, this wording does not appear in any known biblical manuscript. Linguists on the team noted that the expression reflected a much older idea, one that described heaven not as a single place, but as a series of layered realms. For a moment, no one spoke. The stone beneath their feet had preserved a message no one was expecting. In later discussions, some scholars suggested that the unusual wording might reflect an early Aramaic expression used by the first believers when speaking about God's authority. They were careful to emphasize that this was only a theory, not a confirmed conclusion. The phrase, they said, may have entered Greek through local preaching long before it was ever written in stone. The team returned to the mosaic and studied the letters more closely. The carving was precise, the lines were clean, the angles sharp. There were no corrections, no uneven spacing, and every letter stood at the same height. This was not rushed work by a village craftsman. It looked like a text meant to carry meaning and authority. According to the field notes, the inscription was so well preserved that the floor must have been protected early in its existence. That could explain why there was so little wear on the surface. Others cautioned that only laboratory testing could determine how long the mosaic remained exposed before it was buried. Interpreting the message proved far more difficult. If the phrase preserved a local saying, then the mosaic might contain an echo of a teaching that never made its way into the written Gospels. Some members of the team felt a surge of excitement. Others felt uneasy. A few admitted privately that such an idea would provoke strong reactions from multiple sides. In later briefings, the project directors chose their words carefully. They said the inscription expanded known language but stopped short of claiming it altered scripture. Even without firm conclusions, the impact was immediate. The site was no longer just an intriguing church. It had become a place with the potential to reshape debates about Peter's role and about how early Christians remembered the words of Jesus. The letters did not feel decorative. They felt intentional, like a message placed in the floor for future eyes. To understand why such a statement would be hidden there, researchers turned their attention to the people who built the sanctuary and to the faith that guided their hands. a faith that remembered where words were spoken. In the earliest centuries of Christianity, believers did not rely on maps or written guides to locate sacred places. They relied on memory. Churches were built where stories said holy moments had occurred. Sanctuaries rose over caves, wells, and hills where people believed Jesus or his followers had once stood. This was not superstition. It was a deliberate way of preserving memory in stone. The builders of these early churches did not see themselves as inventors. They saw themselves as guardians of something already known. Across the Holy Land, this approach shaped the landscape of faith. The Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem was built above a cave believed to mark the birthplace of Christ. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem rose over the hill where he was thought to have been crucified and buried. In Nazareth, the Church of the Annunciation honored the place where the angel was said to have spoken to Mary. None of these locations were chosen at random. They were selected by generations who still carried living memories passed down through families, travelers, and local communities. The church at El Araj appeared to follow the same pattern. Its builders chose ground that earlier generations had already marked as sacred. The structure included guest rooms, a baptistry, and a wide central space for worship. According to excavation reports, these features are typical of pilgrimage sites designed to welcome travelers seeking prayer or healing. Every aspect of the building pointed toward remembrance. Nothing about its design suggested personal expression or creative invention. The goal was preservation. Some archaeologists believe the site represents an effort to keep a spoken memory alive. The land beneath the basilica may have been associated with moments from Jesus' ministry itself. In that sense, the building acted as a declaration. This is where the words once fell. The builders were not protecting an abstract idea, but a voice they believed had spoken on that very ground. Seen this way, Peter was more than a disciple remembered in stone. He was the keeper of a promise believed to have been given directly by Christ. The floor mosaic that names him as the chief of the apostles may not have been simple decoration. It may have served as a quiet reminder of a conversation early believers never wanted to forget. Some scholars remain cautious. They argue that without written records, absolute certainty is impossible. Yet even they agree that the combination of architecture, inscription, and location points to deliberate preservation. The people who built this church were not inventing history. They were passing something forward. And according to recent studies, what they preserved may not have been just a title or a name. It may have been the very words Jesus once spoke to Peter. When epigraphers cleaned the outer ring of the mosaic, faint letters emerged that no one had noticed before. And with them, the meaning changed completely. The keys, the kingdom, and the hidden words. The final phase of cleaning began as a routine procedure. Conservators photographed the mosaic floor under normal light, documenting every visible detail. Then, the technical team introduced infrared imaging to scan the surface for traces too faint for the naked eye. According to the field log, the scan revealed something unexpected. A thin ring of text surrounded the main inscription. It was badly worn, almost invisible after centuries of exposure and burial, but under infrared light. Marks that once looked like stains began to separate into letters. The room fell silent. An epigrapher carefully traced the faint ring onto a digital tablet, while a second specialist read the emerging letters aloud. Parts of the text were missing, but enough survived to reconstruct the sentence with confidence. After several reviews, the team wrote the proposed reading into their notebook. It read, "He said to him, 'Guard my house, for I go to prepare the heavens.'" The words did not match any known biblical verse. The tone was strikingly personal. It sounded like direct speech, not formal doctrine. Translators examined the grammar closely and noted something unusual. The rhythm did not resemble later Greek writing. Instead, it flowed like an older form of speech. Several scholars on the call suggested that the line fit the structure of early Aramaic phrases. They proposed that this could be a local memory preserved orally and later translated into Greek when the mosaic was laid. They were careful to stress that this was a hypothesis, not a confirmed conclusion. Others urged restraint, emphasizing the need for further testing and peer review. Still, one detail captured everyone's attention. The structure of the sentence echoed Matthew 16:19, where Jesus gives Peter the keys to the kingdom of heaven. But here, the wording appeared to continue the moment with two clear instructions. "Guard my house, I go to prepare the heavens," if the reconstruction is accurate. The first command points directly to Peter's responsibility on earth, transforming the mosaic from decoration into a preserved fragment of remembered words. It reads like a charge to protect the community of believers. The first line speaks of responsibility on earth, while the second suggests that Christ prepares the realms above as Peter keeps watch below. Some scholars felt this pairing implied a shared work, one that links heaven and earth through trust and duty. The emotional impact on the team was immediate. A few felt stunned. Others worried about how such words might be received beyond the site. According to reports, the project directors chose their language carefully. They described the inscription as an early local tradition that preserves an expanded form of a known promise. They did not call it new scripture, and they did not present it as a final conclusion. Even so, the implications were powerful. If the inscription truly reflects an early saying remembered in Galilee, then the mosaic may be the first archaeological artifact to preserve a direct line spoken by Jesus to Peter. Some experts believe this reframes Peter's role entirely. He is not only a gatekeeper who binds and looses, he becomes a steward charged with guarding the household of faith, while Christ completes his work in heaven. The team resealed this floor for protection and sent images to outside reviewers. Within days, word spread beyond the excavation. As the news traveled, debates reignited in seminaries, universities, and pulpit. What did these words mean for everything Christianity had taught about Peter, the apostle who never lost his keys? For nearly 2,000 years, the question of Peter's authority has shaped and divided the Christian world. Entire branches of faith were built around how his role was understood. To some, Peter was the foundation of the church itself, chosen to lead and carry the mission forward. To others, he was one among equals, a symbol of faith rather than command. The debate over the keys became one of the longest-running arguments in Christian history. Over time, the divisions only deepened. Eastern and Western churches disagreed on what Christ intended. In the West, Peter's primacy became linked to leadership and succession, eventually forming the basis of the papacy. In the East, his role was understood as spiritual rather than political, a first among equals, not a ruler. Later, during the Reformation, Protestant thinkers read the same passage in a new way. They taught that the keys did not represent the authority of one man, but a shared symbol of faith open to all believers. Yet none of these interpretations could erase what archaeologists uncovered beneath the soil of Galilee. The inscription at El-Araj was not written in Rome or commissioned by emperors. It was placed by local believers, carved into stone centuries before church councils, schisms, or reformations ever existed. In that early moment, Peter was honored exactly as the Gospels describe him: chief of the apostles, bearer of the keys, guardian of what Christ began. According to early translations, the wording carried a weight that felt both personal and cosmic. It did not portray Peter as a ruler over people, but as a keeper of balance, a steward of faith on earth while Christ prepared the realms above. For theologians, this shifted the conversation. It suggested that early Christians near Galilee saw Peter's calling not as power, but as service. Even critics who questioned the hidden saying agreed on one point: the mosaic could no longer be dismissed as legend. It was physical, it was local, and it was ancient. A voice preserved from the earliest centuries of belief. In the end, the discovery forced a quiet reckoning. The church at El-Araj had not preserved a doctrine, it had preserved a memory. And through that memory, the story of Peter returned full circle to the shores where it began. Today, the question is no longer only what was found, but what it means for those who believe. Was this message meant to reshape faith, or simply to remind us of its roots? What do you think this discovery reveals about Peter's true role? Was he meant to lead or to guard? Share your thoughts below and let the world know what you believe the keys truly represent.